Hi, everyone. Jonathan Brandt, Go Out Living. We have a special guest today. We have Edna Ness, who is going to first start off with a story about her husband and cancer, and then we'll get into her business out in Washington, which deals with hyperbaric oxygen and light therapy. Welcome, Edna.
Thank you. This is exciting.
It is exciting for me as well. Anytime we can talk about stories that really touch us it's huge. That's why we're here. So,
Yeah.
why don't you go ahead and tell us about your husband?
All right. So this is back in 2014. Um, my husband had a sore throat and wouldn't go away. And he finally, I said, go to the doctor. You need to have it seen. He was just trying to ignore it. And he finally went to the doctor. The doctor said, well, if it doesn't get better in a couple days, in a couple weeks, come back and we'll do some testing. Well, he kept ignoring it and ignoring it and ignoring it, which I don't recommend. What's going on in your body, you keep at it. That was in March when he first started feeling it. And now we push forward to October, and he had gone on a trip with a friend. And now he really had a sore throat. And they were going to the boat races down in Key West. And he he said, "Well, if it's not better by the time I get back from my trip, then I'll go back to the doctor." So he got back from that trip, which was a couple of weeks while he was gone. He got back and his voice had changed. And I was like, "Did you have a stroke or something while you were
Oh,
gone?"
wow.
And he said, "Well, I don't think so." And then he said, "Well, I did have a fall." He stepped backwards from paying a taxi driver and tripped on the curb and fell backward and hit his head. And so, maybe that like changed things a little bit for him. But I said, something is seriously wrong. We need to have you checked. So he did go back to the doctor. So we're talking from March until November, basically, that he let this go. And so got him in. They immediately realized that something very seriously was wrong. And he was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. So
Oh,
he had a monster tumor in the base of his tongue. So this tumor was basically, as your tongue is going down into your throat, it was in that base of the tongue. And his voice was changing because like they couldn't even, when they did a tongue depressant, they couldn't even depress his tongue down. It was so large. So that's where it all started. And so we were sent to OHSU over in Portland to talk to a surgeon. He looked at him and said, "There's no way. There's no surgery that can take care of this." So he sent us over to Compass Oncology to talk about radiation and chemotherapy. Um, I started doing research, and I realized how serious what we were dealing with was going to be, because radiation on that area of your body, we're talking about eating and breathing and
mm,
talking, and there's a lot of organs in that area that you're going to damage. So I was really concerned about him wanting to live through the side effects of the treatment. So we went from Compass Oncology over to Providence. And what I realized in going to these different places was it just felt like he was being treated as just another number. And I didn't feel like they really were looking at him as a human. And by this time, because he was so late stage, the tumor was replicating very fast. So I had him on the Gerson therapy, which is a lot of juicing, a lot of coffee enemas, special foods and soups. So a lot of work. And just knowing that I needed to detox him if he was going to go through the treatment that I realized he was going to have, which was a lot of radiation and a lot of chemo. And so when we went to Providence, by this time the tumor had come out of the side of his tongue. So now he had a marble-sized tumor coming out of the side of his tongue, and it would get in the way of his teeth. So he really didn't want to eat much. So he was pretty much on a liquid diet at this point. And so much pain because the tumor was, every time he tried to swallow, the tumor was affecting the facial nerves. And when we went in for his appointment at Providence, I told the doctor that before he had his CT scan done, that I needed him to look at to see if this was the tumor that was coming out of his tongue. And we needed something for pain because he was in so much pain. And this doctor was so rude that he just, he told me he wasn't going to give him any pain medicine because we could just stop on the way home at a drugstore and get some Ambisol. That's for babies that are teething. I mean, I'm sorry. We're talking about severe pain here. And then I told him, I said, and I think we should probably talk about a feeding tube because he can't swallow anymore. And he looked at my husband with a pointed finger and said, just swallow. As if it was that easy. Like no compassion, zero compassion for my husband. Well, luckily, so we went ahead and went through the CT scan and got him prepped to start radiation. And we would be starting in 2 weeks, basically. Well, while I was doing all of my research, I realized that there are different types of radiation that don't cause as much damage. And so I found proton therapy. And it just so happens that at the time, there was only 12 places in the US that did proton therapy. And one of the places was up in Seattle. So it was close enough for us to drive to. And so and then there's also MD Anderson. Well, I had put in for a consult with both of those hospitals. And so luckily Seattle got to me before MD Anderson did. And the day after we had that appointment at Providence that made me so angry, we had a consult up in Seattle with the, Seattle Cancer Care, and about proton therapy to see if that was an option. And when we got up there, they took him back, and the doctor walked in the room, and he looked at my husband with so much compassion. It's like I knew we were in the right place. And he just looked at my husband. And before we said anything, he said, I can tell that you're in a lot of pain. And we're going to get you something for your pain right now. So with that, I mean, like, that was number one to them, is let me see if I can help you a little bit. And without saying a word. And that's, you have to feel really good about who you're working with when you're going down this road, because even if you're with somebody that you feel so good with and so compassionate, you're still going to have other hurdles. So don't stick around with somebody that you're not feeling like they see you.
Well, it's a stressful situation.
Very stressful, and you need to feel like somebody's really going to listen to you. And that's what we felt up there. And so then he looked at my husband and me, and he said, unfortunately, proton therapy is not going to be an option for you. This was a Tuesday that we were there. And he said, proton therapy would take us too long to get ready for your treatment. And I don't think you're going to live through the weekend.
Wow.
So that was the first time somebody had actually told us any kind of a possible time frame. And I know that in sometimes I tell people you don't want to know what they say as far as time frame, but this was because he was choking on his tumor. It wasn't a matter of like a tumor growing inside somewhere else where you're kind of guessing how much time you have. This was, you have no more room inside of your throat to get oxygen because you're choking on your tumor and you can't eat. So, and you can't talk. By this time, he had a whiteboard that he was having to write on because he couldn't talk. So he said, if you guys want to stay here, he said, I know that you've had, that you're set to go down in Providence, but if you want to have treatment here, we will get you started today, which was huge because everywhere else it was, weeks out or let's take time to meet the whole team. And so we would go back, time after time just to make sure we met all the team. This wasn't about the team. This is about my husband. And for him to say, we will get you started today because we don't think you're going to live through the weekend, that was a big deal. And he said, if you need time to talk about it, and of course my husband wrote on the board, let's go out in the hall and talk about it. And so we did. And his daughter was with us, and he wrote on the whiteboard, just take me home. I want to die at home. And I said, I don't think that's the right choice. I said, I think we need to fight. And if they're willing to start you today, let's give it a chance. So he agreed. And so we went back in and they got him started right then and there as far as getting the CT done, getting him set up for his radiation. And so they were going to be able to do his first radiation on Monday. So it was still several days out, but they were going to try and get a feeding tube put in on Saturday, which would be helpful because then at least he's getting nutrition. Unfortunately, so we did get him started. Unfortunately, when Saturday came along, he was not able to, they weren't able to do the feeding tube because he had no more room in his throat. So they were going to need an operating room, and there was not one available. And there wasn't going to be one available until Wednesday. So they wanted me to admit him. His pain was still really high. They wanted me to admit him to the hospital because of the pain. So I did. And which was helpful for me because I was away from home. I wasn't at this point now because we were going to start treatment up there. I had to find an apartment to live in to stay there. We went up just for a consult, and now we're going to be there for a couple months. And so his daughters started looking for an apartment for us. And so we admitted him into the hospital, and they were very kind. They felt like they needed to change up his meds. So they did. But what ended up happening is that he was very full of anxiety because he couldn't breathe or talk or swallow, anymore. He was really freaking out because he was starting to check out.
Well, and
And
they gave him a timeline.
they gave him a timeline, exactly, and he knew it. It's like, okay, now I'm really screwed. I waited all this time and here I am. So this is really the lesson. You wait, you don't wait till you are so far gone, But at any rate, and I always tell people, and this is nothing against guys, but
Oh, we're stubborn. I
I
know
say,
you're going right there.
I say only a man, because I have a picture of his tumor, and it was so large in his throat, and it was in both sides of his lymph nodes, out the side of his tongue. I said only a guy would live with that in his head and not do anything or not say anything.
I'll send you a picture of mine. Uh, It was my neck as well. I had
Okay.
Hodgkin's lymphoma, but you're gonna
Mhm.
you're gonna go, yep, a guy.
Yeah. It's like, so you guys don't do that. Like if you have something that's not feeling right in your body, you really need to speak up. Don't let it go so far that then you have very little hope of getting out of it. So, unfortunately, while he was in the hospital, they did something that now I know is called, I guess it's called snowballing, and it's giving you so many pain medications that it's going to take you out. So basically, it's going to slow your heart rate, and you're going to pass. You're going to go. You're going to pass. So they doubled his fentanyl, doubled his Dilaudid, and then sent him home with me to our new little apartment. And I could tell they doubled his doses, left the room, and I laid down next to him. I asked him if I could give him a shower before we left because he hadn't had a shower. So they brought me stuff, but nobody helped me. So I got him showered and then I got him back in bed. I'm laying in bed, and I'm cuddling up behind him, and I could feel that I was breathing like 3 times the amount of what he was breathing. So it was already was suppressing his respiratory. And so I watched the clock, and he was only taking 4 breaths every minute. And I didn't know at the time, I didn't know anything about pain medicines. I didn't know about these opiates. And I learned pretty darn fast what they do. But they still sent me home with him. I should have, at that point, I should have said, this isn't right. I am not taking him home. I need the support.
Well,
But
just alone, his O2 alone couldn't have been
oh, he was,
anything.
no, exactly. So that was a mistake on the hospital for sure. And while I'm on that note, what I do say about that hospital is, in the end, after we saved his life and he was able to travel and we were up there, and I asked for a meeting with the doctor that had prescribed him those drugs and the president of the hospital. And I really commend them that they were willing to meet with us. And so we were able to sit across the table from her and the president, and I was able to say, you played God with my husband, and that's not your job. And she was able to say, I was only doing what I felt was right for your husband. And but I think she learned a lesson, because what she learned was that I loved my husband so much that I kept him alive through that scenario. I stayed up all night because I knew radiation was starting the next day, and I stayed up all night just reminding him to take breaths through his nose and trying to get any kind of nutrition down him I could. And I kept him alive. And I knew that I couldn't sleep until we got him in there. So at any rate, he did end up, we were able to get him to into his radiation. And they realized once we got to the hospital that he was overdosed. And we did end up putting him back in the hospital for them to monitor him and give him extra oxygen. But the radiation started on Monday, chemo started on Tuesday, and they typically don't do chemo when you're admitted into the hospital. I didn't know that, but they usually don't. They do it as an outpatient thing.
Right.
And so when but they, what, so this hospital, yeah, they did a little bit of wrong, but they did so many things that were right, that were compassion based. They made a they made a decision that they would go ahead and do his chemo as an inpatient person, which was awesome because they knew that they were literally trying to save his life, which I commend them for, because if we would have stayed down here in the Portland, Vancouver area, he would have died.
Right.
Nobody was telling us what was really going on, and nobody was willing to help. So I really commend them at uh, the Washington State Hospital up there. Um, but his tumor, so he had radiation on Monday and Tuesday and started chemo on Tuesday. Wednesday, that tumor imploded from the radiation, and the doctor had never seen anything like it. And I really believe that it's because of everything that I did with the Gerson therapy the month before, as we were trying to get through, what we were going to do. So all of the detoxing and the juicing, and that tumor was weakened by what we were doing, taking all the sugar out of his diet, changing everything. Um, because he said, I've never seen anything like it. Well, once the tumor imploded, now we have time.
He can
So
breathe.
he could breathe, and we could get it, and we got the feeding tube put in on that
Mhm.
Wednesday. So now he could get nutrition. And so I can never fully say that that's why that tumor imploded like it did, but I don't know any other reason. And the doctor definitely couldn't. And he's an amazing doctor, that does this head and neck cancer up there in Seattle. But yeah, so now we had time to at least save his life.
Right.
And but that overdose that they gave him in the hospital put him in a sedative state for the entire time we were up there. So he really we couldn't have conversations. He didn't know what was going on. He was continuing to have hallucinations and do funny things with his hands, thinking he's working, and he would see figures in the room. And he was definitely, his brain took a huge hit from the overdose, which on one hand was almost a blessing, because I could do everything that I felt like I could needed to do for him without him arguing with me.
Right. Exactly.
Which sounds terrible, but
No, it's true though. Yeah.
and it and he didn't remember a lot of what we went through. It's so ingrained in me. When I wrote my book, I it was cathartic,
Right.
because I went through so much with him alone, like, you know experiencing things alone. But like feeding, like giving him a lot of hydration through the feeding tube, I think he would have fought that, you know or I speaking of feeding tubes, so that I don't forget, that's another thing that, they gave us tube feeding formula at the hospital. But if you look at that formula, it's just nothing but sugar.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can't, I mean, I at the time worked for a naturopathic physician, so I know a lot about nutrition. And I thought, there's no way I can do this. And I don't have time to make the food, because I was caring for him, and he was a handful, because he couldn't even go to the bathroom by himself, because he couldn't get up and walk without falling. So I didn't have time to make my own. So I found what's called Liquid Hope tube feeding formula. And I know there's probably some other ones out there now, but this stuff was amazing. When I looked at the ingredients in this Liquid Hope, it was all real food. Like you could pronounce everything that was in there.
You don't find that in anything anymore.
No. And what I did need to do is I needed to get different tube feeding bags to put it in, and a bigger hose for it to flow through, because it was literally like soup, like a bean, almost like a bean soup. And I would water it down a little bit with coconut water. But I swear that that also really helped his healing, just because he was getting actual nutrients as opposed to a bunch of chemicals and sugar, you know. So at any rate, we he ended up having 33 radiation treatments. And during treatment, I did a lot of light therapy on his neck. I did like green clay packs to help draw out the toxins from the radiation, and that I did mix that with I used castor oil packs as well. So I did a lot of treatment on his neck, which he would not probably have let me do if he was like really awake. But by the time he was done with all of his radiation treatments, everybody else that was going through treatment at the same time as him had sunburn and blisters and open wounds. And my husband's skin was like a baby's butt. Like it was, the nurses actually were like looking at his neck going, look at this. Is like, how is this possible? And, but the thing is that did they really want to know? I mean, I wanted to share with them how I did it, but I don't know that that's what they really, if they really wanted to know. So, are you still there? I don't see your picture anymore. I don't know if we're still recording. At any rate, I'm going to just keep going just in case. So, no, I'm sidetracked. At any rate, he got through treatment. He was, however, completely blistered and burned internally. So there you are.
It's so
What's it?
random. It just, I don't get it.
It's did it? I wasn't sure if I should keep going or not.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's still running on your side, so it's
okay,
just
well,
complete. So go ahead and I'll splice it all together.
yeah, okay, sounds good. So, yeah, I kept his skin so beautiful through the treatment. It was, and it's just a matter of just supporting the skin, which they don't really help you to know how to do any of that. And, even though the nurses were looking at his neck going, oh my gosh, look at how beautiful his skin is. How can this be? They really don't want to know because it's not standard of care and they won't share it with anybody else. And that's what drives me crazy, is that there are so many things we can do to help with the side effects of treatment. But if it's not standard of care, they're not going to say anything.
Well, and they're
And
too busy doing
wrong.
paperwork.
And and speaking of paperwork, that's another thing that they because he had so many medications and there was so much going on. I hand made a chart, a daily chart for myself, and made copies of it. So I had a page per day with with times on it, and I could just put an X what I had given him, when I had given it to him. I could write down any side effects, if he had a bowel movement, whatever it may be. And so whenever they asked me, what's going on, or when was the last this, or whatever, and I carried that book with me every day to radiation, and they were blown away that I could open a book and show them what had what's happening. What was his day like? What was his, when did he have his last bowel movement? When did he take his last medications? When, uh, how many of the anti-nausea pills did he take, any of that. And they were like, God, this is like a nurse's dream. Well, why don't they have something like that? It's so simple.
Again,
I've
when I
I've now made it, I've now made it into a PDF form here, and I make sure that everyone has one because you need to keep track.
no,
You
and
know,
that's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're supposed to do on the board. I would find myself when I was in the hospital, I would have to
Mhm.
write down my own stuff on the board. And I had when Christy was in there, I'd have to do it for her as well. And yeah,
Sure.
I was a CNA. I knew all the, but they weren't doing it. They should know
No.
better, you know?
Well, and they should help their patients have something. I mean, it's something that's so simple to just hand over. It's
Yeah.
no different than handing over drugs. Here, this might help you to keep track of things.
Yeah.
But so once he was done with treatment, he didn't get to do his last chemotherapy treatment because his white blood cell count was so low. But we had to stay up there for an extra couple weeks just to get him stable enough so that we could actually drive home. And that was tough for him because my husband was the CFO of a company, a newspaper here in Vancouver for 35 years. And so he was in the public eye a lot. And he was so afraid to come home and face people because he was the shell of a man that he was before, because he had lost so much weight and he was so torn up. And I mean, you know, I think this is where when it bleeped out on us, he was he wasn't burned on the outside. His skin was beautiful on the outside, but on the inside, he was covered in blisters. And I had to help him learn how to swallow again. And this is a kind of a helpful little hint for people that are going through something like this as far as the throat and you're having to relearn how to swallow. I would give him liquid aloe, and I would start it because he did not want to swallow. I mean, who would want to swallow if you have blisters going down your throat?
Oh, hurt. Oh, man.
But I started with just a shot glass, and every hour I would force him to swallow a shot glass of aloe, and just kept it regular. And then once he was able to do that for a few days, then I just got him a little bit bigger glass. So I have these glasses. I have, starting with the shot glass size, and then went a little bigger, and then a little bigger. And so I just graduated, because if you hand somebody a glass of water, or water is not something that you want to give somebody that just had throat cancer, because your muscles can't grab it, the tissue can't grab it. So giving him things like the aloe was really good, or any kind of nectar that has some pulp in it that it can grab. But he was able to, we were able to keep his muscles swallowing, because that's one of the big things with throat cancer is, losing that um, those muscles to swallow. So that was a big deal. And so once I got him home, I moved a hyperbaric chamber home from the office. So just a little portable one, just goes to 1.3 atmosphere, 10 feet underwater pressure. And I started getting him in the chamber twice a day. And he fought me tooth and nail. By that time, he was a little bit more awake. And it was tough because I had to work around the tube feeding, and I had to sit him up a little bit because of the tube feeding. But I was able to get him in there. We started with 45 minutes twice a day and worked it up to an hour twice a day. And we weren't supposed to go back for 3 months, which we didn't. And just keeping him on, the tube feeding formula that we had, giving hyperbaric chamber light therapy treatments, castor oil packs, just, all the things that helped us to heal. We went back for his 3-month check, and they were blown away by the healing that he had. And by that time, his throat, the blisters in his throat, healed up so fast. By that 3-month mark, he was already eating food again, like starting to eat real
Like
food,
actual solid food. That's
actual
amazing.
solid food. And they were blown away. They were like, how how can this be? This is like a miracle. And at that 3-month mark, they actually told him, I can't believe I'm saying this, but you're in remission. And they had initially told him that you have stage 4 throat cancer. And even if we get you out of this mess, you will for sure have cancer again, and it'll probably be in the lungs, because it was so widespread. And that much treatment just destroys your body.
Mhm.
So if people don't understand, radiation and chemotherapy destroy your blood vessels and tissue. So anywhere you're radiated, you're burned. It burns you going in and burns you coming out. So wherever it's pointed, it's going to burn you all the way through. And then if you don't have blood vessels, then how do you get function back in those areas that don't have circulation? So my biggest concern for my husband was osteoradionecrosis. That is when, you've been radiated up in the jawline and the neck, and it destroys the bone as well. And if you can't change that environment, if you can't get oxygen into those areas, you will end up with another round of cancer, because now you are hypoxic and acidic, and you have no blood vessel to get oxygen in there. And osteoradionecrosis is when your bones start deteriorating, and you literally, if you look up pictures, it's not very fun.
No, it's literally dying. That part of your body is
Your
literally
face is dying.
dying. Yeah.
Yeah, your face is dying. And that was my biggest concern for him. And so even though they were saying, "Oh my gosh, you're such a miracle! I can't believe you doing so well," and they put him in remission, we still had to go up every 3 months. Every 3 months, we would go up for several years. Then it went to 6 months, and then it went to yearly. And but at the 18-month mark, so I never told them what we were doing as far as
I love that.
at 18 months, we went up there. And, by this time, I mean, he's eating hamburgers, he's even eating some spicy stuff. I mean, he's eating whatever he wants. And not to boot, he could turn his neck. He had no scar tissue in his neck. He had full function. When they did his, the what is it called when they go down your throat, to the picture to take,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
can't remember what it's called, but
Mm.
when they were going down into his throat, I mean, even at the 3-month mark, they said, "This is unbelievable. We don't even see where the radiation. You have no scarring from the radiation internally. How can this be?" Like, the tissue was beautiful. It was pink and healthy and no scarring, and you couldn't even tell that he had radiation. And so at that 18-month mark, I still wanted to hear from them. What would they do if he ended up having osteoradionecrosis? And the doctor said, "Oh, we don't even worry about that because he's such a miracle. I mean, look at him. He's doing so good." And I said, "But what if?" Because that is my biggest concern. What if he ends up with that? He says, "Oh, we would just send him out for hyperbaric oxygen therapy."
Unbelievable.
And my husband said, "Oh, I'm already doing that." And that doctor's head whipped around so fast. And he said, "How are you doing that?" And he said, "Well, my wife does that for a business." And the doctor looked at me and he said, "Now I get it. That's why he's a miracle." If they know that that's what's needed to be a miracle, why don't they have people in a hyperbaric chamber after I mean, after, when you're done with radiation, get you in there, or even during, because hyperbaric oxygen therapy not only helps to rebuild you, the tissue, the blood vessels, because we're oxygenating into the tissue. I don't know if so. Let me just explain how hyperbaric works,
Yeah, please do.
so that people understand how we could get that healing. And by the way, from treatment, he also lost all of his taste buds, his salivary glands. I mean, everything tasted like cardboard. He had no salivary glands at all. But from hyperbarics, he regained all of that. And that, I mean, it kind of became a joke that, he was drooling in bed. That's how much saliva he had in his mouth at this point. So, how hyperbarics works is, so we typically rely on the red blood cells to carry oxygen to our tissue. If we have inflammation or damage, the red blood cells can't get through the blood vessels to carry the oxygen to the tissue. Therefore, the tissue on the other side of the inflammation or damage has no oxygen. When we breathe oxygen under pressure, we can now dissolve it into the fluids of the body, which can get everywhere because it's just a watery substance. So that's like the plasma, the lymphatic fluids, and the cerebral fluids that gets oxygen into our brain or blood flow. So when you're under a pressure, a gentle pressure, and the magic is in the pressure, by the way, it's not the oxygen. It's called Henry's Law. And Henry's Law says when you put a gas under pressure, you can now dissolve it in fluids. So for somebody, the easiest way to envision this is, those little soda streams that make carbonated water. Well, that's just putting oxygen under pressure and making bubbly water. So hyperbarics is like a soda stream for the body. It's just dissolving the oxygen that we're breathing, whether it's just room air, which is 21% oxygen, or if we give you extra oxygen, we're upping the game, and it's dissolving it into the fluids of the body, and then we're able to, that gentle pressure on the body is pushing that oxygen deeper into the tissue. So now we're getting it to the areas, such as with him, it was his neck and jawline that we needed to get, and his brain from chemo brain and radiation brain. Now we were getting oxygen up into the area that needed it, but we needed to keep that oxygen level up. So it's a supplement of oxygen. So that's why 2 in a day, because one treatment gives you around 3 to 4 hours of oxygenation. And then as soon as you can reoxygenate, those cells still have, then they have what they need to repair. So literally, if we keep the oxygen levels up in the tissue that's suffering, our body is so smart that it will grow new blood vessels into that area. So even if we've killed all those blood vessels in that area that we've radiated, we can bring new blood vessels in there, which is why my husband got such quick healing and was able to get his salivary glands and his taste buds back. I mean, it is a miracle. And, these doctors know it because they know what to do once you're falling apart. And the thing is, I want people to know that with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, there's only 15 diagnoses. that are indications that the FDA has approved for hyperbarics. Post radiation damage is one of those conditions. So the word post, they wait until you're falling apart as opposed to doing it right after they've damaged you. If they would just get us in there right away, then they would have more success with people not having a reoccurrence. Because now, I mean, after radiation and chemotherapy, you are more prone to reoccurrence of cancer because you haven't changed the environment because of the poisons they've used. And I'm not saying my husband needed that treatment. That saved his life. But he wanted to die after treatment because of the blisters and the pain that he was dealing with through that. So if we can if we can help people heal faster, recover faster after treatment, and not have all the side effects that because you and your wife have been through. I mean, the whole time I'm listening to your story, I'm thinking, oh man, I wish I would have known him at that time.
Right.
Because between oxygen and light therapy, that's a match made in heaven. So hyperbarics oxygenates your body, like super oxygenates. Light therapy increases circulation and reduces inflammation. So now we're moving that blood around more, and it just speeds up the whole healing process.
It makes sense.
So yeah, it's common sense.
It's common sense.
They're two of our most important primal nutrients. We can't live without oxygen for minutes, and we can't live without sunshine.
Exactly. But we're missing it.
We are.
We are.
And I mean, I believe in all of, the primal nutrients. That's, and our, good, healthy food, whole foods. I'm a firm believer in things like, I used that clay packs on his neck to keep his, skin good. And we used mud baths to detoxify his body. I mean, this is simple stuff.
Right.
Castor oil, essential oils.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I have so many questions.
Okay, well, shoot them at me.
I really do.
Yeah, I would love to do another episode and shoot the questions at me, because I feel strongly that people need to know about these therapies.
We do. And that's why I have so many questions. I honestly do.
This way it'll give you a chance
hours
to write down your questions too.
Oh, I got them. Trust me, I got them.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and we'll wrap it up, and then we'll get another one set up.
And I just want to say, if somebody wants to find me, if somebody, I am, it is my calling in life to help others. And my business is called In-Light Hyperbarics. I'm in Vancouver, Washington. My name is Edna Ness. You can call my office, and my team can put you in touch with me. I just want people to know that it's like, I love helping people.
Well, and you show it. And
sometimes you just need to run something by somebody. And it's like, because us caregivers, need help. And sometimes we're so in the moment and in the caregiving that we can't see the little things. And sometimes when you just talk to somebody else, you can give them a little bit of tidbit to get them,
it's communication. It's just that little bit of communication that can go so far, to be honest with you. It's just somebody listening.
For sure. And so reach out to me if somebody hears this and wants a conversation, but maybe when you're asking questions about all that we do, maybe we can add a little bit of caregiving stuff in there too.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I would love that.
So important. So important.
Real quick before you go, though, I want you to mention your book. What is your book about?
My book is called Radical Recovery, Extraordinary Healing with Oxygen and Light After Chemo and Radiation. And it is the story of my husband's cancer. So it's got, more detail than what I shared, but it also has some other little, just little things that we did to help him to heal, and some other stories of other people that used oxygen and light for their healing. So it's a very short story. You can get it on Amazon, and um, it's yeah, it's a
It's
short
worth it.
story, but it's my story. It's
Yeah.
it's a short read. It's a
Yeah.
great one to carry on an airplane
There you
because you can
go.
read it the whole time you're there.
Love it. Well, like I said,
Yeah.
we're gonna throw all this up on the blog, so people can get a hold of you or find the book and
All right.
everything on
Sounds
you. Basically, we'll get it
good.
all up on there.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's been amazing. I mean, it's like we both have said, the stories are everything, and
They
we
are.
hope people actually learn to be on the preventative side. But if
Yeah.
you are going through it, these are great stories that they need to hear so they can hopefully get
Yeah.
through it easier.
For sure. Give them, yeah. Learn from our lessons.
We trust me, I didn't do it right. So not the whole time, but I'm learning for sure. But yeah, definitely. No, it's been
Okay.
an
Well, it's
absolute
been a real
pleasure.
pleasure, and I really congratulate you on what you're doing.
Thank you. I
It's
do
super
appreciate
important.
it.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
here we go. On our way out, I just want to remind everybody, find the attitude, keep the attitude. Go out living. Bye everybody.